before we get into the scenarios, I'm curious to hear why did you come to this workshop? Maybe by mistake, I don't know. But anyone want to say what was of interest for this one?
My name is Mile. I work with Rios Partners, and I came partly because we also work a bit with scenarios. So I was curious to see how you do that. And earlier, I was interested in just hearing a bit, from listening to you in the plenary, hearing a bit more about what Business for Social Responsibility is doing and what kinds of strategies you're using that might be helpful for Ethos. We have a partnership with Ethos as well. And so how does the scenarios work link with your strategies in terms of supporting the sustainability movement and seeing what we can learn from that and how we might use it here?
Futuros is a communications agency, and we found through a lot of research across the world that building a positive, aspirational, clear, image-full picture of a sustainable future is one of the best ways of cutting through to get people's attention in order to ask them to behave a bit more sustainably or live more sustainably or play more sustainably, whatever it may be. So I struggle from comms perspective, actually knowing sometimes what to put in it, so I'm kind of hoping there might be a bit of that today.
My name is Mariana. I work for the Akatu Institute, and we are working with conscious consumption. This is our cause. But lately we've been working with change of lifestyles, and I think it has much to do with forecasts and the future of sustainability. So this is mostly why I'm here.
There are lots of different ways that we can think about different futures. And here are a few ways that you might think about it. Thinking about what are the sustainability challenges facing our world. And as the discussion this morning indicated, there is, I think, a strong sense that one of the primary purposes of business these days is to meet the big global challenges that we're facing. And those are in part sustainability challenges and in part having to do with demographic change and economic change and technological change and so on. And then you think about how the world is responding to these challenges, and then think about the implications for a company. So what are our big global challenges? What is the range of ways that different institutions are thinking about these challenges? Business, government, civil society, consumers and the public, different sectors of society, how are they dealing with these big challenges? This is actually something that can make a great deal of impact on a business. Resilience is the concept of how does an institution manage to continue moving forward despite very substantial change. And it's undeniable that we're living in a world of very substantial change. When we did the Sustainability Outlook, and up in the corner you can see a picture of the map that we produced, we thought about this as a kind of wind tunnel. A forecast doesn't give you a strategy, but it allows you to test a strategy. Where does it play in? Well, all of these different kinds of ways, from strategy to where do we put a store or a factory? How do we think about employees? Because the employee base 10 years from now will probably have very different concerns and live in a very different world than the one we've got now. So it's really everything from practical things like where do you build a factory to more qualitative questions like how do you build a human resources strategy. This kind of thinking does not have a long history inside business. This has been something that has been done more academically, but more and more companies are recognizing that the world is changing so fast that it's really important to understand what some alternative scenarios. By looking at alternative scenarios, you can get a sense of the different ways the world might play out, and what most people who do this for a living think is that the future actually ends up being a combination of a lot of different scenarios. The world doesn't move in a straight line. What I'm going to do is present 4 scenarios and include then some signals, some things that might well happen over the coming decade. They're not predictions, but they are very well-educated guesses about the ways that different aspects of our world will evolve. Here's one point. How can you use the future to obtain more happiness. Let's face it, we're all human beings working inside institutions, so human happiness is a very important objective. It's not only the bottom line. The other point is a legacy, and what are we building? What are we building? Because hopefully we're creating institutions that make a contribution to a strong society, a cohesive society, as Ethos is saying, an inclusive, green, and responsible world. So what is the legacy that we leave? 4 scenarios here, and the 4 scenarios are a growth scenario, a collapse scenario, constraint scenario, and transformation. Collapse is what it says. We have a lot of crises, instability, natural resources no longer available, increased conflict, migration that creates more conflict. It's a pretty unhappy picture. If there's one word that comes to the front here, it's conflict. Transformation is probably the closest to utopia that's present here. We make fundamental changes, lots of innovation. We address a lot of our natural resource questions, better prosperity for more people, institutions and new kinds of institutions that work effectively on a global basis, a positive picture. But in the transformation scenario, and this is important too, there's also disruptive change, and disruptive change sometimes creates hardship for some people, even if generally it's pointing in the right direction. Transformation depends a lot on thinking about the environment, on leveraging technology, and just as the question came up again this morning, who decides what technology is worth implementing? Big questions, and we don't all agree on those things. Some of us are very much in favor of genetically modified organisms. Some of us believe it's absolutely terrible. Some of us embrace nanotechnology. Some of us reject it. Some of us are really intrigued by nuclear power or geoengineering to address climate change. Some reject it out of hand. Lots of tough questions here because this scenario really depends a lot on technology. Growth is essentially the business as usual scenario. But this is the scenario that looks most like our current world extended into the future. And we have an economic model today that focuses a lot on economic growth. That's how we measure the health of our economies. That's how companies are measured by the stock market. Now, the growth scenario looks good based on traditional measures, but it also leads to some of the kinds of environmental stresses and strains that the world is struggling with today. In this scenario, we see material well-being increasing, but incrementally. We see innovation happening, but incrementally. We see move to cleaner energy, but only incrementally. This is not a fundamental change scenario, and a lot of people would say that this is business as usual and is not going to address the big global challenges that we've got. Constraint is about layering on top of a growth scenario different ways of thinking about things that basically makes the current model a bit better. But it's not a transformation. It's today's world, but a bit better. So we know a lot more about ourselves. We can manage our lives a bit better. But again, this is not a transformation scenario. This, to me, is a pretty good picture. I mean, this is sort of making the best of the current system, basically. And that's not a bad thing.